Hey, did you guys know that there was a Supreme Court ruling handed down today? And no, it wasn't about Obamacare. Actually, Justice Anthony Kennedy, writing for the majority in the Supreme Court decision that will keep Israel off the passports of Jerusalem-born Americans, begins by calling Jerusalem a delicate subject, I'd say. Well, there's been competing claims to the holy city. And they're not only time-worn, but a sensitive issue the justices contended with in their 6-3 decision on June 8th, which upheld the State Department's policy of not allowing Americans born in Jerusalem, or as I like to call it, Al-Quds, to list Israel as their birthplace. The Supreme Court in Zivotofsky versus Kerry waded into tensions dating to the founding of the United States over whether the executive or the legislative branch determines foreign policy. This week's ruling effectively nullified a law passed by Congress in 2002, the George W. Bush era, requiring the State Department to list Israel. They were requiring the State Department to list Israel as a birth country for Jerusalem-born Americans, should the citizens request it. Like its predecessor, the administration of President George W. Bush, the Obama administration said recognition of another nation's sovereignty over territory was a matter strictly for the executive branch. Pro-Israeli groups had hoped for a decision that would determine U.S. recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. But after hearing judicial interjections during oral arguments on the case last year, some feared that that case was mutating into a broader issue over Congress's role in determining foreign policy. Mark Stern, who wrote the amicus brief filed by the American Jewish Committee, arguing that recognition of another nation was a matter for Congress as well as the President, said the decision left intact the traditional American ambiguity over which branch determines foreign policy. Quote, "This issue has been unsettled for 200 years, and the court leaves much of it unsettled today." End quote. Stern, the AJC's general counsel, called the decision as good a defeat as we could have suffered. That's because Kennedy's majority decision considered only the president's right to recognize another nation's sovereignty. Quote, "A formulation broader than the rule that the president alone determines what nations to formally recognize as legitimate, and that he consequently controls his statements on matters of recognition, presents different issues and is unnecessary to the resolution of this case," Kennedy wrote. So it seems like they were trying to sneak in recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of so-called Israel, but it didn't work. In a statement responding to the ruling, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee most of us know this as AIPAC, noted that Congress, where the lobby is most influential, retained its foreign policy clout. Quote from AIPAC spokesman Marshall Whitman said in an email, "Clearly we are disappointed by the ruling. However, the court opinion, viewed in its totality, clearly recognizes the important role that Congress plays in U.S. foreign policy, a role that has been critical in strengthening the U.S.-Israel relationship." End quote. In addition to Kennedy, a conservative who sometimes swings liberal, the majority included the bench's 4 liberals, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, Elena Kagan, and Sonia Sotomayor, as well as Clarence Thomas, a conservative. Breyer, Kagan, and Ginsburg are the court's 3 Jewish justices. The dissenters were all conservative: Chief Justice John Roberts, Samuel Alito, and, of course, Antonin Scalia. So, I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Something for us all to be thinking about if and when you go to the polls to vote. Please keep this in mind with regards to our Congress. This has been Me the People. Break this news.